Good morning, Jane, and good evening, everyone. Welcome to this special lecture featuring Jane Weissman, the co-founder of the community mural collective Artmakers and co-author of the cultural history book On the Wall, 4 Decades of Community Murals in New York City. Jane Weissman is an influential figure in the community mural movement in New York City, and she has been involved in the creation, organization, and advocacy of community murals for many years. She has worked with numerous artists, community organizations, and government agencies to promote the creation and preservation of public art. She curated the traveling exhibition Images of the African Diaspora in New York City Community Murals. She also curated the 2017 exhibition La Lucha Continua, The Struggle Continues, 1985 and 2017. Art director of New York City's Green Thumb and its Artists in the Gardens programs, she installed murals and sculptures in its gardens. Jane is a frequent lecturer throughout the United States and abroad, whose talks focus on New York City community murals, 1970s land art in the American Southwest, and the Mexican murals of Los Tres Grandes. Her commitment to empowering communities through art has inspired artists, activists, and community leaders alike. And we're honored to have her here today to link the lectures in the conservation series of the Department of Conservation of Antiquities and Works of Art of the University of West Attica to talk about Artmakers, a short history of New York City's community murals and the effort to preserve them. Now, I would like to welcome our guest speaker, Jane Weissman. Jane, thank you very much. Are you ready? Perfect. Let's start.
Thank you, Maria Calamera, everyone. It's a real pleasure
sharing my screen.
to
Sorry.
present this.
Sorry, I'm sharing my screen. Just a minute, please.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. I will cut it later.
There.
Perfect. Let's start.
Great. Whoop, my phone. Hold on. Hello. Hi, Linda. I have to call you back. I'm Zooming. Bye. Okay, I'm back. Sorry. So tell me when.
Yes, we can start. Okay, I will repeat the last. I will repeat the last words. So now I would like to welcome our guest speaker, Jane Weissman. Jane, are you ready to start?
I am. Thank you, Maria.
Perfect.
Calamera, everyone. First, I want to thank Maria for inviting me to present this talk to all of you. And of course, I'm thanking you for attending. And afterwards, I look forward to your questions. A self-described activist artist, Eva Cockcroft, the founder of Artmakers, famously said, "Painted images cannot stop wars or win the struggle for justice, but they are not irrelevant. They fortify and enrich the spirit of those who are committed to the struggle and help to educate those who are unaware." Political activist Mike Alowitz continued the thought. When we make art in the studio, we assert our humanity. When we make art in public, we assert our existence as social beings. Next. Next slide. Pablo Neruda, the great Chilean poet and political activist, succinctly said, "Murals are the people's blackboard." Mysterious to us, the images in prehistoric cave paintings were meaningful to their viewers. Next. In the Middle Ages and Renaissance, illiterate people learned the stories of the Bible through church frescoes and stained glass windows. Next. Starting in the 1920s, the murals of Los Tres Grandes, Mexico's Diego Rivera, David Alfaro Siqueiros, and Jose Clemente Orozco both revived and created a non-colonial art and taught people their history. Next. In the United States, during and after the economic depression of the 1930s, the Work Progress Administration commissioned murals for public housing, hospitals, schools, and post offices. Most presented themes referencing history and social issues, but many were purely abstract in design. Next. Murals beautify, educate, and celebrate, as well as protest, organize, and on occasion inspire action. Chicago's Wall of Respect of 1967 has long been recognized as birthing the contemporary national community mural movement. Energizing America's urban landscape, community murals immediately spread from Chicago to Detroit and soon to LA, San Francisco, Albuquerque, Boston, Philadelphia, and New York City. The murals were a response to the political upheavals of the late 1960s and 70s. These included the murders of Malcolm X and Martin Luther King, the winding down of the civil rights era, the culmination of protests against the Vietnam War, the renaissance of the women's movement and second wave feminism, the birth of the environmental movement, and the emergence of ethnic and racial pride. Next. What specifically are community murals? They are collaborations between artists and community groups that convey a message important to residents. Residents play a significant role in determining themes and content, and the artists develop the imagery that brings these concerns to life. Black Power is one of New York City's earliest murals, sponsored by City Arts Workshop, whose walls dominated the cityscape until the mid-1980s. The mural addresses Black teenage boys' fears of drug-related street violence. In the upper left-hand corner, we see what looks like a cop with a nightstick taking a bribe. After the Police Benevolent Association protested, the nightstick was removed, the first instance of mural censorship. Next. This is one of El Puente's 11 politically charged murals, also painted by teens, that protested conditions and championed causes that directly affected their neighborhood. Provocative, graphic, grotesque, and funny, this mural shows the deleterious effects of cigarette advertising directed to young people. Next. It is the artist community collaboration, along with the mutual respect of everyone involved, that distinguishes community murals from commission murals, memorial walls, and what some call artist-initiated murals, that is, most street art, whether aerosol or paste-ups. Here, the sponsoring organization wanted to honor Dr. King and Winnie Mandela. Local youth, however, wanted Malcolm X, and after 2 heated weeks of discussion, they won their elders over, and everyone was very happy with the result. Next. Of the artist, often the artist-public dialogue that occurs during a mural's creation can be as powerful as the mural itself. Here, the mostly white residents asked that the skin of Pam's dark-complected dancers be made lighter. The artist complied, but the red and white stars on the Black dancer's blue skirt was a not-so-subtle reminder that we are all American. Next. Raging fires and the Ku Klux Klan and their white hoods were part of Joe's original design. The Black community residents protested the Klan imagery, saying that if they were Jews, they wouldn't want swastikas in their mural. Joe complied. He also tamped down the flames, although he preferred the original design, which he thought stronger, if more provocative. Next. At a community meeting, a woman whose son was killed by cops asked the graffiti organization Tat's crew why there were no murals about police brutality. Because, Tats replied, no one will give us a wall. Her response, I have a wall, paint it. A third panel listed 24 names of people killed by the police as of 1996. Since then, too many more Black people have died at police hands, and there have been many, many more police brutality murals. Next. Artmakers, When Women Pursue Justice, honors 90 activists who, risking life and liberty, fought for social change in the United States, for voting rights, civil rights and racial justice, reproductive rights, environmental justice, and rights for workers, immigrants, and gays. Viewed as a large demonstration, its central image is Shirley Chisholm, who represented Bedford-Stuyvesant in Congress. She was the first African-American and the first woman from a major political party to seek the presidential nomination. Regal on a golden steed, she bears a standard proclaiming a catalyst for change, words she wanted to be remembered by. She is surrounded by placards with portraits of 13 movement leaders, along with smaller portraits of 67 activists, including the 9 ancestors who ushered in 20th century activism. Next. Artmakers' 4 Federico Garcia Lorca murals were inspired by Sleepless City, Brooklyn Bridge Nocturne by the Spanish poet and dramatist. Lorca was murdered in 1936 by Franco's forces at the beginning of the country's civil war. The murals bear his eyes, mouth, ear, and full face, along with a stanza from the poem in both English and Spanish. Next. Since Artmakers initiated the project, it was important to create a sense of community around it. Thus, a community component was developed for each mural. In the white stripes of a huge American flag are smaller flags of the country's residents and workers come from. A silhouetted map of the world, one without borders, is filled with dots representing the countries people come from. As most of the people living near the murals come from Puerto Rico, a map of the island indicates their home villages. Lastly, a map of this Bushwick neighborhood is filled with dots on the streets where people live. Next. Celebrating this Harlem neighborhood, the mural also includes imagery related to the intellectual and cultural concerns of the National Black Arts Movement, a loose network of African-American artists and writers that flourished from the mid-1950s to the mid-1970s. It is considered the cultural wing of the Black Power movement. Next. This mural focuses on African history and culture. To the left of the pyramid is Menelik I, the son of King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. In 950 BC, he established the Solomonic dynasty that ruled Ethiopia for almost 3,000 years. It ended 225 generations later, in 1874, with the fall of Haile Selassie, who stands to the right of the pyramid. The 15 pyramid portraits are of African and African-American political leaders and cultural icons. Next. Cimarron depicts the story of runaway African slaves who, escaping Spanish-owned sugar plantations, find refuge with the indigenous people of the Caribbean. Next. One of City Art's ethnic murals, the Puerto Rican Heritage Mural, expresses cultural identification, group solidarity, and racial pride. It is filled with images of historic Spanish conquistadors and runaway slaves, as well as contemporary Puerto Rican life in New York City. Painted in 1975, it is now New York City's oldest existing mural. Next. People notice murals around them. Whenever I tell people I'm a community muralist, they almost always tell me about a mural in their neighborhood or one they pass on the way to work. I'm amazed how accurately they describe the imagery. They remember when the mural was painted, what it meant to them, how it faded, and when it disappeared. Next. Some murals last for decades. Others disappear within a few years. Community murals, especially exterior ones, are a most vulnerable and ephemeral art form. We might physically lose murals, but it is imperative we do not lose their memory. Next. Murals are susceptible to weather, sun, wind, rain, air pollution. With 114th Prince Street, most people are fooled at first by the trompe-l'oeil continuation of the actual Prince Street facade. Today, the mural is very badly deteriorated, faded, and covered with tags. The time to save it, alas, is long past. Next. Painted on tar, this mural by Ricky Asher and the following wall are all that remain of Artmakers' 26 mural cycle, La Lucha Continua, The Struggle Continues, from 1985. Next. Seeing the vines that had grown into the mural's cracked and faded paint, an art conservator said, "Leave them be. Any intervention would adversely impact on what remains." Next. Walls spring leaks and repairs cover or destroy the imagery. Freddie's mural was tarred over in 1982, just 5 years after completion. It featured 3 larger-than-life figures representing descendants of African slaves and Latino and Asian immigrants that then made up the neighborhood. Next. In summer of 1985, Artmakers adopted the wall to create La Lucha Continua, The Struggle Continues. Here we see the large collective mural and 6 of the project's 26 smaller murals. Next. Now, I will digress a bit. La Lucha addressed 6 issues of great concern to the community. The murals were placed so that, from any vantage point, all themes could be seen. Next. Nancy's mural addressed development and gentrification. Next. Noel's mural on the left addressed the inequality of wealth, and Seth's mural, based on an actual incident, addressed police brutality. Next. This is one of several murals that protested U.S. involvement in Central America and its support for local dictators. This still goes on. Next. Susan pays tribute to South African women and their role in the anti-apartheid struggle. Cliff's mural protests apartheid and the legacies of colonialization and the rise of corruption throughout Africa after independence. The colors represent the African liberation flag. Red for conflict, black for the people, green for hope. Next. Eva and Joe's mural shows an unlucky migrant stopped at the border and led away by immigration agents. Today, people seeking asylum are still held at the border or turned away. They may also be long-standing, law-abiding U.S. residents facing the threat of deportation. Next. Now we return. Whoops, I missed something. Okay, sorry. After a few years, the big wall with La Lucha's collective mural was again covered with tar. The leaks never properly repaired. In 2015, new owners renovated the building and commissioned this mural, designed with no community input. Next. Now we return to how murals disappear. Old buildings come down, new buildings go up, destroying or covering murals. Painted in 1973, the Jewish ethnic mural depicted Lower East Side history, presenting images of immigration through Ellis Island, sweatshops, labor unions, the Forward newspaper, the Holocaust, and a year earlier, Munich's Summer Olympics massacre, which took place in 1972. This mural was the city's second oldest existing mural until early November 2016, when, without warning, this symbol of the community was painted over, sparking neighborhood outrage. The investor who purchased the building claimed it was done to protect residents from the large chunks of painting falling off the wall, callously adding that the building would be demolished in any case. Next. 40 feet tall and visible from blocks away, Eddie's mural celebrated past community achievements while urging ongoing activism. Facing a parking lot, the mural is now blocked by a residential tower. Next. This mural, depicting the rehabilitation center staff and clients, was covered by new development. One of the buildings was a Green Thumb community garden. Today, all the public can see is the joyous figure of the young girl on the right. Tenants have a view of the figures at the mural's other end. Next. This mural was a victim of both development and censorship. The portrait of Ho Chi Minh was vigorously protected by the Vietnam veterans who owned the adjacent parking lot. Twice, their white paint bombs obliterated Ho's face, the second time after the scaffolding was removed. The splotch can be seen between the star in the Puerto Rican flag and that band of yellow fields over on the right. A tall building has replaced the parking lot, and only a bit of the blue sky at the upper left can still be seen. To many, gentrification is hardly, as the title of this mural suggests, the seed of progressive change. Next. Controversy is usually limited to specific mural content, and through discussion, it can be resolved. But in the most extreme cases, like this one, murals like this one are whitewashed in the dead of night by a small group of neighbors in conflict with the larger community who approved the artist's design. It didn't matter that the negative mural images in this mural morphed into people working together in common cause. The artist and her group of summer teen workers, albeit kids of color, responded to the white homeowner's negative comments by revising and circulating a new design. They got no negative feedback. Yet, the mural was soon bombed by white paint, which we can see. The media got involved, and a community meeting was planned. However, before that meeting could take place, the mural was whitewashed in the dead of night. Next. Only a year before, the same artist led another group of teens to create an equally provocative mural, but a few blocks away in a neighborhood that welcomed images of the controversial Malcolm X and the Puerto Rican nationalist Lolita Lebron, along with civil rights icons Harriet Tubman and Frederick Douglass. Both projects utilized the same basic organizing and decision-making tools, including community meetings and posting preliminary sketches around the neighborhood. Next. Painted by 80 muralists from 20 countries, Pathfinder Murals celebrated revolutionary struggles in Cuba, Grenada, Nicaragua, and South Africa, as well as uprisings of the exploited working classes. Alas, the political considerations of its sponsor, the Socialist Workers' Party, trumped aesthetic ones. As the mural neared completion, the SWP fired Mike Alowitz, the mural's director, who actually initiated the project, and reworked or removed imagery. Fidel's portrait, just below the red printing machine, was defaced so many times that a 24-hour guard was ultimately installed before the SWP whitewashed the mural in 1996. Next. Mural restorations are dependent upon organizations able to raise the funds needed to preserve a mural and/or oversee the project to completion. It is rare that there is government funding. When the original artists cannot restore their work, professionals need to know and respect the artist's intention and style. Sponsored by City Arts, the 1984 St. Albans Greatest Hits honored African-American icons of music and sport, who in the 1940s made this neighborhood their home. By 2003, the mural had badly deteriorated, and the name and mission of City Arts had radically changed. Instead of offering its support, the new organization asked for a fee. So, rather than restoring the original, Joe, with the blessing and the funding from St. Albans Civic Association, covered it with a new surface, replicated the imagery, and renamed it. Next. Created and added to over a 5-year period, Hank's mural was restored in 1998 by his assistant and funded by the original sponsor, Hope Community. Next. Over a long weekend, Artmakers muralists painted this memorial wall to Eva Cockcroft, the organization's founder. The same artist restored it after rival gangs covered the central globe and beyond in competing tags. This was learned from a volunteer painter who knew the gangs. And after he told them about Eva and La Lucha, the mural has remained graffiti-free. Next. In 2006, mural historian Tim Drescher and art conservator Will Shank launched Rescue Public Murals. Their aim was to identify endangered murals of significant historic and artistic value and obtain financial support for their preservation. Heritage Preservation, based in Washington, D.C., administered the project. Eva Cockcroft's homage to Sirah, La Granja in Harlem was co-sponsored by Green Thumb, Artists in the Gardens, and Artmakers in 1986. It was restored in 2009, Rescue Public Murals' first and alas, only project due to the lack of obtaining funding for future endeavors. Next. The assessment by art conservator Harriet Ergang Alden revealed that the paint's fading and flaking were mainly due to the wall not being primed. And in order to preserve the mural, it had to be repainted. The 3-month effort entailed 3 restorers, 3 apprentices from the neighborhood, and many volunteers. Next. Eva used golden artist colors, and after consulting with the company, it was decided to apply its clear, soft gel gloss to the wall to serve as the primer layer. This coating would also preserve and protect the original mural and allow its colors and shapes to be seen, guiding the restorers working on this very textured wall. Next. Slides from 1986 presented the most accurate description of Eva's colors and were used to establish the basic palette of hues. Approximately 100 hours were devoted to the faithful matching and mixing of more than 70 colors, over 30 of them green. The completed mural received another layer of soft gel gloss to protect the new paint before the final application of varnish to repel the sun's ultraviolet rays. Next. As the restoration progressed, conservation researchers conducted a cross-sectional analysis of materials, an infrared spectroscopy, and other tests on small paint and mortar samples. Determining which paints faded the least may be instructed in creating future paints or protective coatings for use in outdoor environments. To aid continued research, a small portion of the lower left wall was divided into 5 2-inch by 2-inch sections and set aside as a control area. Each square got 1 more treatment than the last. The first square got none, the last square got 5. Should the mural's paint fail or discolor, these control areas may reveal if the paint or the sealers are the cause. Next. In 1986, after Eva completed Sirah, she took the leftover paint and gathered a few art makers to create a response to residents who, while complimenting her work, spoke of the neighborhood's terrible drug problem. Push, Crack, Back functioned as a rallying cry to heed Malcolm X's words from his 1964 speech, "The Ballot or the Bullet." Note that the 7-foot hands pushing against the graffiti-covered drug train are made up of people crowded together. The mural was destroyed when the building was renovated. Next. Hearing about the Sειρά restoration, the 46th Street Block Association in Hell's Kitchen, Manhattan, approached Rescue Public Murals, wanting to restore Arnold Belkin's 1972 mural against domestic colonialism. It was then the oldest existing community mural in the city. Next. In 2011, Rescue Public Murals initiated a fundraising campaign, and art conservator Harriet Ergang Alden of the Sειρά restoration performed an assessment along with Belkin's widow, Patricia Quijano. Besides the general fading and flaking of the paint, there was the very serious problem of the wall. The lack of a proper roof gutter allowed water to seep between the brick and the parge, and over time, extensive chunks of cement and thus imagery had fallen off the wall. Next. It's a complicated story, one that is still ongoing. For several reasons, the restoration was put on hold, and in 2013, Rescue Public Murals withdrew from the project. This was especially frustrating as there was so much documentation to allow for a true recreation of the original, deemed the only preservation option. Next. I recently visited the mural and saw an almost complete new wall, which can be seen behind all of this scaffolding. Only the lower part of the original mural remained that by now has surely disappeared. One person I met said that a recreation was planned. Another, noting how much the neighborhood had gentrified since 1972, wondered how relevant that recreation would be, and if a completely new mural might be a better option. Time will tell. The community will decide. Next. In these digital times, most murals, old and new, are preserved by online documentation. There are many books about graffiti art, but very few about community murals. In 2009, Janet Braun-Reinitz and I co-authored On the Wall, lamenting the physical loss of older and even more recent murals. We were unwilling to lose the stories that contribute to our understanding of them. Its muralography, basically a catalog raisonné, lists every outdoor community mural in New York City up to 2008, arranged alphabetically by artist and then chronologically within each listing. It remains the most comprehensive record of New York City's community murals. Next. This plaque is one of many place markers that City Law, a terrific nonprofit organization, is installing throughout the Lower East Side. It's part of Rise Up, an oral history-based project that honors sites of cultural and arts activism. Certainly, community murals qualifies. Next. Artmakers exhibition, La Lucha Continua, The Struggle Continues, 1985 and 2017, commemorated the 26 original murals and discussed how the 6 socio-political issues they address have not much improved. Only geographical locations have changed. Next. The exhibition is documented by a catalog and a website, laluchaartmakers.org, and most fortuitously led to Artmakers' entire archive going to the downtown collection within the special collection of New York University's Fales Library. A new website, artmakersnyc.org, is now under construction. Thank you for your attentions. I welcome your questions and your comments.
Thank you so much for your exciting and inspiring talk, Jane. Your expertise here helped us understand the power of public murals and think about different options for preservation. Community murals are part of contemporary cultural heritage, and they gained value and significance, finally. I stopped sharing my screen so we can see each other. In Greece, there is not a long history of community murals. There were murals created during World War II and then the Greek Civil War. In 1979, the Hellenic Committee for International Research and Peace, in collaboration with the Artistic Chamber of Greece, make an effort to paint community murals in the neighborhoods of Athens. One or two of these murals, I think, that still exist, but in a very bad condition. And then in the 80s, we had the first boom of graffiti, some public murals in the 90s. And then in the first decade of the 21st century, during the socioeconomic crisis, there was an explosion of street art. So we have public murals, but in most cases, even though there are some exceptions, they are not community murals. We now have some questions for you from students and colleagues and friends. Did the art makers keep information about the creation process of the murals? So it can be used as a kind of conservation documentation that might help understand material techniques, environmental conditions, etc.
Certainly, the process of creating a mural is documented through photographs. So we see the process, which tells its own story, but frankly, we never created a mural with conservation or preservation in mind. I think we're always mindful that a community mural is ephemeral. It has a certain lifespan. Those that exist for 20, 25, 30 years are the miracles. And still, we don't know which murals are going to have that historical significance that are important to the community. So I guess the answer is no. We do the work, hope for the best, and then if it turns out a mural is worthy of consideration, of preservation, and the community is behind the effort, then that can happen. Rescue Public Murals was an effort to identify those murals, raise funds to preserve them, but finding the money was almost impossible.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that in today's situation, the collaborative work and common aims needed to create community murals can be achieved? Is it possible today?
I think it is possible. Certainly, we saw after the murder of George Floyd, community came together and there was this incredible outpouring of community murals all over the country. Those were community initiated. Clearly, there's always the mural that is self-initiated. It's one person who has his or her idea and wants it on the wall. But there are still community organizations like Groundswell in New York City, El Puente, in both of them are based in Brooklyn, that work with community groups to create walls that reflect the concerns of community residents. And I gave a talk just a couple of weeks ago on mural preservation for the Historic District Council. And one of the presenters came up to me wanting to learn how to do a mural because in her neighborhood, there are people of different nationalities. They're Latinos, they're Chinese, they're African Americans. And she sees that the mural will be a way to bring people together in the design process and to create something that will be meaningful to the community. So yes.
That sounds great. Another question is, how were the projects for the creation of the murals funded?
Well, different ways. Clearly, if a community group commissions a mural, they are primarily responsible for the funding. And they may have it through dues or whatever. As we know, if we're being fair to artists, artist fees are the largest portion of a budget. There's scaffolding costs, and those can be quite high, but these days in New York, we don't go on high scaffolding so much anymore because to go above a certain height, the artists have to have a week-long training. So who wants to do that? Also, those high scaffoldings now have this gauzy cloth over them. So people on the street can't see the artist and the artist can't see the people on the street. So that wonderful public artist dialogue is missing. So we now work on ladders, rolling scaffolds. So that's not a huge cost. And materials aren't a huge cost. When Artmakers has initiated a project, we go looking for funding. And we go to the usual suspects, the foundations that we know might be interested. There are certain government leaders who have discretionary funds that maybe we can get some of that. But more recently, we've been doing crowdsourcing campaigns, which seems to be the new way of getting money. And quite frankly, writing proposals and sending them out is a dismal affair because you put so much effort into that and the return often, unless you're lucky, is not that great. So crowdsourcing is an option, or we end up working as volunteers and we go after donations of materials.
And how about the conservation of the murals? Is it the same about the founding?
It's probably worse. Because first of all, if you're going to do it right, you need an assessment and you want to bring in an art conservator. We've been extremely lucky, Artmakers and Rescue Public Murals, and working with Harriet Ergang Alden, who pretty much has donated her time. And the assessments are really quite elaborate in determining the status of the wall, you know, what has caused the problems and how they might be ameliorated, if at all. And then it turns out that the cost to preserve a mural are usually greater than the cost of actually making the mural in the first. Yeah. So getting the money is really hard, especially if the mural has deteriorated really badly. In the case of the East Harlem mural, Hank Pressing's mural, Hope Community, the original sponsor, they paid for it. The St. Albans Civic Association paid for the restoration of that mural, St. Albans Greatest Hits. I suspect that the artists weren't paid very much for their effort. That mural, by the way, St. Albans Greatest Hits, is again in peril because it's painted on a railroad bridge. And that bridge is maintained by the Long Island Railroad. And I have pictures because at the same conference that I spoke with a couple of weeks ago, there was a group from that neighborhood. And they say, well, but you have to know, it's great to see how this mural was restored in 2003, but in 20 years, this is what's happened. And they are trying to get the railroad to fix the abutment because until that happens, it doesn't make sense to go in and preserve the mural that's there, which right now is okay. The paint, there are just a few places where there's a bit of damage and could be restored very easily, probably without a whole lot of money involved. But without getting the infrastructure fixed, we don't know what will happen. We're working on it. But yes, raising money for restorations is very hard.
And how important is the conservation of the New York community murals for you?
Well, having participated in so many and studied so many, it's very important because one of the things that Janet and I spoke about and talked about was these murals are a window. They're to an unofficial history of a neighborhood. They tell us so much about what is going on in a particular neighborhood at a particular time. Now, sometimes you can see a mural that's been there 20, 25 years and you say, what was this about? If it's a historic mural, if it's ethnic pride mural, you kind of know what that's about. But sometimes the imagery is really kind of abstruse. I know when we were writing the book, we discovered an article in Eva's archives about the early murals in Harlem that were painted in 1970. They had completely escaped the historical record. Through research and good luck, we learned about the program and were able to track down some of the original artists. And those were the murals that were painted by artists involved in the National Black Arts Movement. And so the images, which make no sense to me, and probably nobody would quite understand them, all had specific references. There were symbols that came out of the philosophic writings of Kofi Antubin from Ghana. It had to do with Egypt and moving down into Africa. I can't remember the specifics offhand, but it was extraordinary to find out what these murals were about. So I think it's really important to preserve them. And fortunately, we do have, digital documentation. And as I said to you earlier, it's very exciting that the pyramid, the Bedford Bowles murals did not have names. We gave them names. So we called the pyramid with Haile Selassie and Menelik I pyramid. And then there was a mural around the corner that had 3 pharaohs in it among a couple of other images. So we called that one 3 pharaohs. And it seems that those images are being considered for an exhibition to take place at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in late 2024, 2025, about how African-American artists have been inspired by Egyptian imagery within the diaspora. So that's exciting to know that these murals are respected and recognized of having value, artistic value, you know, as well as socio-political value.
And I want to ask something. What do you think about overpainting as restoration of the murals? Is it a problem for the authenticity?
Like
yes.
Yeah.
Do you think that is it a problem for the authenticity of the mural, of the historical value? What do you think?
I think I have mixed feelings about it. I am absolutely thrilled that the Sειρά mural is now preserved and is treasured by the community. But it was repainted. And even though the same colors are used as much as possible, and if I look at, say, a woman in a hat, the old woman with the hat or the new woman in the hat, they're different. They're not the same. So what do you say? There's a choice to let the mural go because it's beyond just touching up or whatever those terms are. Because what is it? There's conservation, preservation, recreation. So you have to decide. I think the real interesting project will be what happens with the Belkin mural. Because now there's nothing left of it at all. It's a complete recreation. It's not even preserved under the clear soft gel gloss. At least the Sειρά mural is there. So if we were to remove the varnish and the top coating and the paint, you would get to the protective layer and you could see the original painting. So I think that's important. And that's what, to my mind, gives the validity to that restoration, recreation. With the Belkin, it's hard to know. I see both sides of the argument. Does this mural even have relevance today, besides it being an historic artifact? But it's not even a real historic artifact. It's kind of like recreating the palace in West Berlin or in Berlin, although my friends who come from Berlin say it's fabulous. But the idea of it is kind of strange. And as it turned out, we always knew that we would have to paint over it, we would have to recreate it, but the condition of the wall kind of made any possibility impossible. So I don't know how that will turn out. And I think I'm of more mixed feelings about that project than I am about the Sειρά project.
Yes, I understand and I agree.
Yeah.
And the last question is, do you believe that conservation is part of the life of the project, of the mural, and should be planned from the beginning? How would you view the involvement of conservators in the creative process?
I don't think people look beyond the creation of the mural. Nobody, because we know that murals are ephemeral. They have a short lifespan for the most part. But I think that certain projects, especially if it's an organization that has a history, hopes it will have a future, could be more aware of exactly what is done that could aid conservation efforts in the future. I don't think people kind of plan. I think people are surprised when a mural is there for 20 years. because there are so many factors that can adversely impact a mural. I suppose if it's something that's commissioned, that has a lot of funding behind it, has a lot of organizational support behind it, from the get-go, it makes perfect sense. If we're working on the community level, it would be nice, but probably it's not going to happen. Yeah.
Yes, I think that the students had in mind the project that we run in the university, and we ask from artists to paint murals. They offer their work. They're not paid for their work. But we have a team of students that work for the documentation of the project. So they might have this in mind. Okay.
I think that's a great thing to do. It would be interesting. Do you know Mike Alowitz, the guy who painted Pathfinder?
Mm-hmm.
Because for years, he taught at Central Connecticut State College a mural program.
Mm-hmm.
I wondered if they did any documentation along the way in terms of seeing about future conservation. It might be worth an email to him to say, so, did you do
That's
it?
a good idea. Yes, that's a good idea. I'll keep a note. Yes.
Because maybe what you're doing is unique, but very important. And if there are other programs such as yours and Mike's, they should be aware of it.
Yes, that's a good idea. I will do it. And we are waiting to see your new website.
Yes, it's very exciting, although it's very frustrating. It's a replacement website. The website, the original one, failed, but it was an opportunity to make this a historic website with lots of process shots and lots of links and information that will just be there forever. We kind of look at it as a historic site. It will be a companion to La Lucha Artmakers. It will look similarly. People will interact with it similarly. There'll be links between them because obviously there's overlap. And when it's done, it's going to be quite wonderful. And so what I'm hoping very soon, at least, there will be an in construction page that can be, so if people go to artmakersnyc.org, they won't get they'll get a page that says, it'll be our homepage that says in construction. So that's the first thing that has to happen. And for lots of reasons, it has not yet happened. But soon.
Okay.
And you'll be among the first to know.
Oh, thank you. Okay, I think that we're coming to the end of this meeting. We're grateful to Jane Weissman. Once again, Jane, thank you very, very much. And we hope to have you with us here in Athens next year.
That would be lovely. I look forward, one way or the other.
Yes. Okay, so goodbye and take care.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
and goodbye to everybody.